Sarah stood in the center of her kitchen, the heavy, sweet scent of lilies filling the small space. She traced the edge of a petal, her mind drifting back to the day they arrived. It was 3 weeks after they met. Mark had handed them to her with a smile that felt like a quiet confession. He had memorized her favorite flower from a casual comment she dropped during their first dinner. At the time, it felt like proof of a rare connection, a man who actually listened. She remembered the precise way he held the bouquet, the intensity in his gaze, and the rush of feeling seen by someone who understood her perfectly. She pressed the stems against her palm. It was the first move in a sequence she was only now beginning to decode. The silence in the kitchen stretched, heavy and still. She looked at the flowers again, but the warmth of the memory had evaporated. She realized now that the gesture was not an act of affection, but an act of acquisition. He had not been listening to her. He had been gathering data. Every petal, every comment, every shared moment was a calculated piece of a larger design. The game had started long before she even knew there was a board. Mark had not chosen her by accident. He watched her from across the office floor for weeks before he ever spoke a word. He tracked how she stayed late every Tuesday and Thursday, eyes locked on screens, fixing the errors left behind by others. He watched her offer her own time to help a junior associate who had missed a deadline. He saw the way she always assumed the best, the way she took responsibility for problems she did not create. To the rest of the firm, she was a reliable colleague. To Mark, she was a specific type of target. He needed someone who prioritized others above her own boundaries, a person who could be relied upon to forgive, to fix, and to endure. He recorded the frequency of her late nights and the way her posture slumped when she finally reached for her keys. He documented the way she smiled when someone thanked her for a task she had completed on their behalf. He was looking for a specific architecture of virtue that he could dismantle. He found it in her office, in the rhythm of her work, and in the way she never asked for anything in return. He had already decided how the interaction would unfold before he even approached her desk to offer that first polite greeting. The shift was immediate. Once the initial contact was made, the pace accelerated into a relentless cycle. Sarah's phone became a persistent source of vibration. Notifications arrived before she opened her eyes in the morning, a steady stream of digital attention that demanded an instant response. Mark called the moment she clocked out, his voice filling the silence of her commute, anchoring her day from start to finish. Her brain entered a cycle of constant anticipation. Every buzz was a hit of dopamine, a confirmation that she was the center of his world. She stopped analyzing the content of the messages and started focusing on the frequency. The sheer density of his attention created a sensory overload that pushed her critical thinking to the periphery. She felt a phantom vibration even when the device was silent. She stayed up late to reply, sacrificing sleep to maintain the connection. The intensity was not a product of organic attraction. It was a deliberate strategy. By saturating her time and her thoughts, he effectively silenced her intuition. Logic requires space and quiet to function, and he ensured she had neither. She was being conditioned to equate his presence with her own well-being, trapped in a loop where the only way to quiet the noise was to engage with him further. The intensity shifted from volume to alignment. During a quiet dinner in their 3rd month, Sarah spoke of a long-held ambition: opening a small bakery. She described the smell of yeast and the precise heat required for a perfect crust. Mark leaned in, eyes fixed on her face, mirroring the cadence of her breathing. 2 days later, a heavy book on sourdough starters sat on their kitchen counter. Mark did not just mention the book. He recited details about hydration ratios and fermentation times. He claimed he had spent the afternoon researching ovens and small batch techniques, stating he had always wanted to master the craft himself. Sarah watched him circle the kitchen, his hands moving over the counter as if he were already kneading dough. She interpreted his sudden interest as a profound validation of her own soul. When he spoke about the future of their shared business, he used the exact phrases she had used days earlier. She did not notice the mimicry. She only noticed that for the first time, she did not have to explain herself. He finished her sentences, anticipated her preferences, and echoed her values back to her with perfect accuracy. She stopped checking her phone for external validation because she believed she had found the only mirror that mattered. The rain beat against the window, creating a rhythmic, isolated backdrop. It was a Tuesday. Sarah sat across from Mark, the room dimmed to a single lamp. She spoke about the tremors she felt before her board exams, the specific fear of losing control, and the recurring dream of being left behind in a crowded terminal. She spoke for an hour. She detailed the childhood house where she felt invisible and the precise moments she had failed to meet her own standards. She watched Mark for a reaction. He did not interrupt. He did not offer his own stories. He simply leaned forward, resting his chin on his palm, his eyes unblinking as he tracked every word. When she finished, he reached out and touched her hand, nodding slowly. He repeated the name of her childhood street back to her, confirming he had captured the detail. She felt the weight of her secrets dissipate, believing they were now shared burdens. She did not see him mentally cataloging the information. She did not notice the way he adjusted his posture to remain perfectly still, like a hunter listening for a twig snap. Every confession she offered, he filed away. She was handing him the blueprints to her own history, providing the leverage he needed to dismantle her confidence piece by piece in the days to come. The 6-month anniversary arrived with flowers on the table and a bottle of wine opened. Sarah waited for the right moment between courses, her pulse quickening as she finally shared the news of her promotion. She leaned forward, waiting for his smile, for the familiar mirroring of her excitement. Instead, Mark remained motionless. He set his glass down with a precise, metallic click against the wood. His eyes, usually warm and focused, went flat and distant. He looked at her not as a partner, but as an object he had finished inspecting. He stated that the promotion was not a reflection of her skill, but a clear sign that her boss simply pitied her. The words landed like lead. Sarah felt the air leave the space between them. She looked at his face, searching for the man who had listened to her childhood fears, but found only a stranger. He stood up, pushed his chair back, and walked out of the room without another word. She remained at the table, her hands trembling as she smoothed the tablecloth. She spent the next hour replaying her own words, wondering if she had been too boastful, if she had somehow invited his disdain. She did not follow him. She sat in the silence, waiting for him to return, already crafting the apology she would offer for a success she had earned. The relationship shifted into a cycle of erratic, high-stakes uncertainty. It became a slot machine. Some mornings, Mark brought her coffee in bed, his voice soft and attentive, pulling her back into the illusion of safety. By evening, he would vanish behind a wall of silence, refusing to speak for 3 days. He offered no reason, leaving Sarah to pace the apartment, searching for the error she must have committed. She began to apologize for the air she breathed, for the way she walked, for successes she had never claimed. She apologized for things she had not done, repeating the words until he finally looked at her, until he finally offered the smallest, fleeting smile that signaled the game was back on. She watched him constantly, her eyes tracking his every movement, reading the tension in his shoulders to predict whether he would grant her his attention or turn his back again. The more he withdrew, the more she pushed to reach him. She emptied her own sense of self into the void he created, hoping that if she gave enough, if she bent far enough, the machine would pay out again. She did not realize that the win was never the point. The point was the constant, exhausting pull of the lever. The phone stopped ringing entirely. When Sarah asked about her friends, Mark leaned in close, his voice a steady, calm rasp. He told her they were jealous of their love, that their advice was designed to poison the bond they shared. She believed him because he was the only voice left in her world. Then, the reality warping began. He started with small things. He would move her keys, then ask why she was so forgetful. He would deny conversations that happened hours prior, his face a mask of concern as he suggested she might be losing her grip on reality. "I never said that," he would repeat, his tone gentle, almost pitying. Sarah stood in the kitchen, staring at the counter, trying to recall the exact sequence of the morning. The details blurred. She reached for a memory, but it slipped away like water through fingers. She felt a cold, hollow pressure behind her eyes. She looked into the hallway mirror and did not recognize the woman staring back. The person in the glass was tentative, fearful, and perpetually waiting for a correction. She had been dismantled, piece by piece, until the floor beneath her felt like it belonged to someone else entirely. She was a stranger residing in her own skin, trapped in a house where the walls were closing in, controlled by a man who held the map to her mind. Sarah slumped against the baseboards, the floorboards cold and hard against her spine. She stared at the blank wall, her breathing shallow. Her gaze drifted to the empty space where her life used to be. Then, a thought flickered. It was not a feeling, but a cold, logical observation. She replayed the lilies, the office work, the bakery dream, the rainy Tuesday nights. Each event stopped being a memory and started being a data point. The pieces locked together in her mind with the precision of a machine. She saw the trajectory. She saw the mirroring. She saw the deliberate timing of the love bombing. It was not a romance. It was a script. She had not been failing as a partner. She had been succeeding as a mark. The weight of the realization pushed the air from her lungs, but it did not break her. The confusion that had clouded her vision for months evaporated, leaving behind a razor-sharp focus. She was not a broken person. She was a witness to a process. She watched her own hands rest on the floor, steadying herself. The stranger in the mirror was gone. In her place sat a woman who finally understood the game. She stood up, her joints stiff, and looked around the room. The house was no longer a cage. It was just a space he had occupied. The patterns were transparent, and because they were visible, they were powerless. Sarah held the phone in her palm, the screen glowing with his name. She did not hesitate. Her thumb tapped the block command, confirming the choice. She set the device face down on the counter and did not look back. She walked to the hallway, her movements measured and deliberate. She reached the front door and gripped the handle. The metal felt cold, grounding her in the present moment. She turned the lock. The click echoed in the quiet apartment, a definitive sound that marked the end of the script. She pushed the door open, feeling the change in air pressure as the hallway beyond greeted her. She stepped over the threshold, leaving the interior space behind without a glance at the rooms that had once held her captive. Outside, the streetlights reflected on the pavement. She walked toward the stairs, her pace steady and rhythmic. She did not check her pockets for a phone. She did not check her shoulder for a ghost. She reached the sidewalk, turned toward the corner, and kept walking. The silence of the night was no longer a weight, but a clean, empty space. She owned the path ahead. The game was over, and she was the only one left on the board.